This is a CBS News Special Report. I'm Scott Pelley at the CBS News Broadcast Center. President Obama has just spoken to reporters about the Ebola outbreak. Today, the president canceled a campaign trip and instead convened a special meeting of his cabinet after a second Dallas nurse, Amber Vinson, tested positive for Ebola, catching it from patient Thomas Eric Duncan, who died from the disease last week. Just a few moments ago, we saw Miss Vinson in the yellow hazmat suit being led onto an airplane in the Dallas area. She is being flown to a highly specialized infectious disease unit at Emory University in Atlanta. It is not clear how the two nurses were exposed, especially since they were supposed to be following strict rules to avoid infection. Even more worrying is the fact that Amber Vinson got on a commercial flight from Cleveland to Dallas while running a high fever. This was the president a few moments ago in the cabinet room at the White House.
The news has been dominated by the diagnosis of a second healthcare worker in Dallas with Ebola. And in light of this second case, I thought it was very important for me to bring together our team, including our CDC director, Tom Frieden, to hear directly from them in terms of how we are ramping up our efforts here. Obviously, initially, we want to express concern for the two health workers who've been affected. Our nurses and our healthcare workers are absolutely vital to the health and well-being of our families. They sacrifice for us all the time, not just in this case, but in the case of other illnesses that affect us. They are selfless, they work hard, they're often underpaid, and so our thoughts and prayers are with them, and we have to make sure that we are doing everything we can to take care of them, even as they take care of us. As a consequence, what we've been doing here today is reviewing exactly what we know about what's happened in Dallas and how we're going to make sure that something like this is not repeated and that we are monitoring, supervising, overseeing in a much more aggressive way exactly what's taking place in Dallas initially, and making sure that the lessons learned are then transmitted to hospitals and clinics all across the country. First of all, what I've directed the CDC to do is that as soon as somebody is diagnosed with Ebola, we want a rapid response team, a SWAT team, essentially from the CDC, to be on the ground as quickly as possible, hopefully within 24 hours, so that they are taking the local hospital step by step through exactly what needs to be done, and making sure that all the protocols are properly observed, that the use of protective equipment is done effectively, the disposal of that protective equipment is done properly. The key thing to understand about this disease is that these protocols work. We know that because they've been used for decades now in Ebola cases around the world, including the cases that were treated in Emory and in Nebraska. So if they're done properly, they work. But we have to make sure that, understandably, certain local hospitals that may not have that experience are walked through that process as carefully as possible, and we're going to make sure that this rapid response team can do that. In addition, we are reviewing every step of what's happened since Mr. Duncan was initially brought in to the hospital in Dallas, so that we understand exactly where some of the problems may have occurred, and doing a thorough canvass and inventory of all the workers who had contact with Mr. Duncan, including those who engaged in some of the testing that took place. We are now communicating all these various lessons to hospitals, clinics, first responders around the country, and obviously, given all the attention that this has received, we're going to make sure that that provision of information is constant, ongoing, and being updated on a real-time basis.
The President of the United States in the cabinet room just a few minutes ago after convening a special cabinet meeting on the Ebola crisis in the world. The President went on to say that the virus must be attacked in West Africa, the epicenter of the epidemic, because if it is not ended there, it can spread globally. We said earlier that the second nurse in Dallas, Miss Amber Vinson, flew across the Midwest last night. She had a low-grade fever during that flight and was admitted several hours later this morning into the hospital in Dallas and is now headed to a specialized treatment center at Emory University in Atlanta. There will be a great deal more on this on your local news and at CBSNews.com. We'll have a full wrap-up right here on the CBS Evening News, including a report from Liberia, the ground zero of the Ebola epidemic. Until then, I'm Scott Pelley. Good day.